Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order the Plan Commission meeting for the City of Marshfield for Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. You do the roll call?
Council President Paschal?
Yes.
Alderperson Rosendich?
Yes.
Caprillion? Banker? Golden? Ockenick?
Here.
Johnson?
Okay. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes of the June 15th, 2021 meeting. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Pinker to approve the minutes and a second. Is there any commentary on that tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to citizen comments. Are there any citizens who wish to comment tonight? Megan? See, I even know your first name. You've been here so often. Oh, he's going to turn on the microphone.
All right. And I am hoping to open a group daycare center at my property. So I think that's on the agenda tonight, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Any other citizens who wish to comment tonight? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, which is the conditional use permit request by Megan Daleski to allow a group daycare center land use in the MR12 multifamily residential district located at 1033 South Adams Avenue, parcel 33-06971, presented by Emmett Simkowski, Associate Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Paschal. So the property in question is located on the west side of the city, just northeast of the intersection of South Adams and West 11th. It's primarily in a residential area. The general area around it is all zoned SR3 single family residential. Across the street of South Adams, there's some SR4 and TR6 two family residential. So a brief history on this parcel and what was going on. 2008, a conditional use permit was approved by the Plan Commission for a group daycare within a residential zoning district, at which the time that was permitted by conditional use. From March 2008 through October 2013, it was licensed by the state of Wisconsin as a group daycare with a capacity of 25 children, ages 2 years, 6 months to 7 years. On 2013, the facility was sold to a new owner and was licensed until 2016 as a group daycare to care for 16 children, 3 years to 10 years age. After 2016, that same owner chose to relicense the facility as a family child care center with a capacity of 8 children. In July of 2019, the applicant now took over ownership for the facility and has been operating a family daycare since she has. Applicant has stated that family daycare can no longer satisfy the needs and demand, and the waiting list is growing. So the applicant is pursuing to be licensed as a group daycare with an anticipated number of about 24 kids. So the difference between a group daycare and a family daycare is the number of children that they're allowed to have and a separate license. Our zoning code allows family daycares in essentially every single residential district permitted by right. Group daycares are in other zoning districts, such as this one is rezoned MR12, and are permitted as conditional use. Group daycares are also regulated a lot stricter regarding building codes, and are also regulated by the state of Wisconsin. So seeing that previous group daycare that was granted a conditional use in 2008 had ceased for a period of 12 months, and a group daycare is no longer permitted in a residential zoning district. Hence is why they went for the recent rezoning of this property and are here for this conditional use. So the standards for group daycare center in Chapter 18, group daycare centers shall not be located within a residential building. As I said in a staff report, we looked at this right away. I'm like, well, this was initially created as a residential building, but since it's been converted over to group daycare, they have been meeting all building code requirements, and they have been working with our commercial building inspector and a state and bringing it up to the most current codes as well. So a commercial building inspector actually would consider this a commercial building itself. The facility shall be surrounded by a buffer yard with a minimum opacity of 0.5 along all property borders abutting residentially zoned property. The property owner's permission and signature is required as part of the conditional use permit, which the applicant is the property owner in this case. Minimum parking required is 1 space per 5 students plus 1 space for each employee on a largest shift. So talking to the applicant with the number of kids and employees, they would be required 8 parking spaces. So initially in 2008, the conditional use had a few conditions. The two main ones were to create that loop driveway that they have. You can see on the 2020 air photo for pickup, drop off, and parking. And there also was a condition that the backyard was to be surrounded by a 6-foot opaque fence. Shortly after that conditional use was approved, it came back to Plan Commission to get amended. And they changed the 6-foot opaque fence was to only be on the south property line facing those closer houses. And that amendment was approved. And currently, this property meets all those conditions with that conditional use. Another thing I mentioned during the rezoning of this property, an older person brought up some parking concerns. So you can see she had 3 to 4 employees, so that parking is provided here. And then if you look at the parking loop too, it could easily accommodate at least another 4 cars. So it meets the zoning code requirements for required parking. Staff is also going to recommend a condition that if parking concerns do arise, we can bring it back to Plan Commission. So that said, staff's recommendation is to approve the conditional use request by Magnoleski with the following conditions. It is to meet all requirements of the City of Marshfield Building Inspector and Wisconsin Department of Children and Families. Staff will monitor the site for parking concern for a period of 12 months. If concerns are brought up, this use will be brought back to the Plan Commission. Minor site plan changes may be approved administratively, provided they do not need any additional exceptions from the zoning code or from any conditions approved with this conditional use. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Public hearing is required for this, so we will open a public hearing. And is there anyone who wishes to comment on that public hearing? Any comments in a public hearing? One more time, anyone wish to comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Is that what we do? Okay. Papillion. Okay, a second by Mr. Rosendich. Is there any discussion on it? Mr. Papillion.
Just want to say there's a big need for daycare in town, so I'm glad to see this. Looks like it's going to go work out.
Mr. Koenig?
And just a very quick, this is just basically reissuing a conditional use permit that existed prior, correct?
Essentially, the zoning code changed a little bit. They used to be permitted in residential districts with conditional use. Now with the code, they're not. So we just had this rezoning recently on it, MR12. So essentially, yes, it's been a daycare for the past 13 years. The status of it, whether it went from family daycare to group daycare, has fluctuated though.
Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Peg. Item number 6 is a conditional use permit request by Secure Storage of Marshfield to allow a personal storage facility land use in an existing building in the CMU Community Mixed Use Zoning District located at 1306 North Central Avenue, parcel 33-03215, presented by Emmett Simkowski. Emmett.
Thank you, Mr. Paschal. So the property in question is the late Shopko property at 1306 North Central, just southwest of the intersection of West Upham and North Central Avenue. The area is primarily zoned CMU community mixed use to the northeast, east, and southeast. To the north of it, there's some UMU urban mixed use parcels. To the south, there's some SR6 single family residential. And to the west, there's some MR24 multifamily residential. So the property in question is 7.35 acres, and the existing building is quite large. It's about 2.36 acres or 103,000 square feet. The building is also physically attached to a pizza ranch and mattress firm building to the east, or to the southeast. The remainder of the parcel is covered in asphalt parking that was used for Shopko, and just counting on the air photo, there's a little over 300 parking spaces on there. The building has been vacant since Shopko closed its doors in 2019, and staff has gotten few inquiries for anything besides personal storage facilities like this one or light industrial and manufacturing uses. So the applicant Secure Storage is proposing to convert the existing building into a climate-controlled, interior-oriented personal storage facility. The facility can be accessed by bay doors on a north side and a south side of the building. It'll also be accessible from the main entrance to it. Little to no modifications will be done to the exterior of the building besides signage and some advertisement on it. So facility is proposed to be built out in phases, not all at one, but ultimately the end state, it's gonna be around 1,018 separate units, different variety of sizes. The applicant is also planning on having office spaces for lease towards the front of the building. No tenants have been identified yet, and the exact layout of the office is still in design. One thing staff want to know, on the south side of the building, on the West Calshut frontage, it's across the street from single-family houses and single-family residential zoning. Staff is recommending to put a condition to regulate the hours of operation. 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. is what we came up with, and the applicant agreed with that. This could prevent headlights from people backing into the building, going out that way during nighttime. So recently, we approved a zoning code amendment to allow these types of facilities within a CMU district. And these are the special standards for the community mixed use district. All entrances to individual storage units shall be accessed from the interior of the building. They shall be located in existing commercial building as an adaptive reuse project. No buffer yard is required. Facilities may run electrical power within hallways, common areas, or office areas, but not in individual storage units except for lighting. And a minimum required parking is 1 space for each employee on a largest work shift. So the applicant, they said they have 5 people working for secure storage right now, and they'll be adding 3. So technically this place would be required 8 parking spaces. Shopko would have been required 294. So parking is really not a concern with this. One thing I did want to note on the rendering, they did propose some false garage doors to the exterior of the building as advertisements so people can see it's storage facility. These doors would not be able to access anything on the inside of the building. However, they do give the impression that it is exterior oriented storage, but they will not be. This is a big blank facade, and they also can help kind of break it up. So there's not much on there. If Plan Commission isn't a fan of this, they did propose an alternate facade. So in this, how they got the overhang in front of the Shopko entrance, they're essentially gonna glass it off and have an example of like what storage units would look like inside, so you can see it that way. With that said, staff's recommendation is to approve the conditional use request by Secure Storage of Marshfield to allow a personal storage facility land use in existing building in the CMU Community Mixed Use District located at 1306 North Central with the following conditions. Storage of items outdoors is prohibited. No personal business may be run out of personal storage facility units. The southern loading bay on West Calshut street frontage shall have set hours of operations from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Minor site plan changes may be approved administratively, provided they do not have any additional exceptions from the zoning code or from any conditions approved with this conditional use permit. We do have the gentleman from Secure Storage here today too, if you guys have any questions for them as well, but that is all I have.
All right, this also requires a public hearing. So we'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this matter? Anyone who wishes to comment on this matter? Can you come up to the microphone and state your name?
Are there any plans to modernize the outside or make it improvements to make it more appealing from the main road there? I don't know who I'm talking to, but.
Just wait a bit.
Okay.
Wait up there a second.
Yeah, well, from the renderings they were gonna do some stuff on outside and signage to it as well. They did have some examples of their Watertown one, and they did dress up the exterior. It was old pick and save at one point, and they did dress it up a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add to it, but.
Can you just provide your name so that?
Yeah, Nick Ludwizak. I'll spell it for you. Ludwic as in cat, Z as in zebra, AK.
Got it, Josh?
10625 Park Avenue, Auburndale, 54412.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I do have an example of the Watertown one if you would like to see that too. That looks like. Um,
Is there anyone else who wishes to comment on them?
Glass in the front? Is that glass in the front so they can see it as storage, or is?
How many units are in this location? Yes. How many? 350?
Anyone else for public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
Just one more question.
Sure.
Obviously 1,000 units is a lot of units, so did you guys do any research on, try to get as many, the interest to fill that many storage?
Can I just have you come up to the microphone so it's going out through the sound system here?
So my name is Tim Moy. My family is the owner of Secure Storage. So I guess I'm the managing member by default.
Okay, thank you.
To answer your question, as far as the research we did what I would call an internal feasibility study. And then we also had an external feasibility study done by an industry expert out of Virginia. So there was, I would say, 2 feasibility studies on the area.
Okay. Additional comments or questions?
I like that glass look better on that. I don't know if that's possible here because you're talking about putting office space in the front. Is that what I'm understanding? I don't know if.
Yeah, so one of the stories is, as we migrate from the Watertown project to this project, is the cost of acquisition is just about 400% more. So we had quite a bit of latitude in the Watertown project. This type of storage just wasn't as popular 5 years ago when we did that. So we were able to buy the building at a much more distressed price. Now you have some national players that are supporting the price from dropping that low for the acquisition of the building. So the idea of dropping the glass, in Watertown, we didn't have the overhang like we do here in Marshfield. So our idea of dropping the glass through the overhang would pretty close to equivalent what we have in Watertown at a lesser cost. To do what we did in Watertown, we actually had to cut a pretty big hole in the building.
Right.
And reinforce it with some pretty sizable steel. So both of these options were more economical than what we did in Watertown,
Okay.
where we actually put a commercial glass into the building.
Right. So then if we're shutting off the south side on Plasha, then obviously they can get in from the north side, I'll say, and they can get all the way through to if they have a unit way on the south side, or is the building divided off? How does that work?
So what's different about this building, and Watertown also had a drive-through, and so we were able to give up quite a bit of square footage with the drive-through. So in Watertown, I couldn't close off one end, but in this building, there's actually there's not a drive-through, it's a drive-in. So if you conceptually think about it, you drive in and then you back out. So this building, it's a lot easier to close off one drive-in and allow the customer to use the other drive-in.
So that's what I'm saying. They can go from one end of the building all the way the other, even though it's after 9. What I'm saying is if they're shutting you down at 9
Yes.
o'clock on the south side, they're able to access all the way from the other.
Any tenant would be able to access the facility from the north side, wherever their unit was.
Okay.
In the staff recommendation, can I get a clarification on what is meant by number 2? I think I know what that means, but I'd like some more information there.
I guess it's kind of a fail-safe. I mean, I wouldn't say it's common in these type of units, the ones that are like on the east side of the city, the garages. You could see people essentially living in there, running a business or doing something out of it, using them for that purpose. And I guess it just kind of fail-safe to make sure that people aren't doing that kind of thing.
So the idea is they don't have merchandise in there that they're meeting people to then sell out of
Correct.
these units.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Steve?
I mean, I'm obviously when the zoning change came up, I raised some concerns. And I guess my question here is, it sounds like you guys aren't going to be building all 1,000 units at one point, correct? So if a commercial person came forward and offered to buy 3/4 of the building because they want to develop something, that's something you guys would be open to?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we reserved some space up front, but it's an investment. So I don't know if we'd condo the building as you suggested, but we'd certainly make it available for rent. So if somebody came in and wanted it for large office, distribution warehouse, yeah, and in particular, it's just, we'll probably even start marketing it that way. But if they don't come along and I can create the demand for the storage, which I believe we can, then so that's why we believe we'll be successful, because we can use at least 3 different uses for this building, whether it's retail office, whether it's warehouse distribution, or whether it's self-storage. So if we start out with 50,000 square feet of storage, which really isn't 50,000 square feet because you got to take out the hallways, it probably is about 40,000 square feet of storage. It's just much nicer because nobody's ever dealing with snow and weather. And so it's in the larger cities, this is considered much classier, more female-friendly storage. It's all cameraed. Most of your storage facilities in town don't have cameras and don't have gates. So this is much more of a deterrent for inappropriate activity.
And
Josh?
I guess one thing that we have as a requirement is a conditional use permit, but it's not explicitly listed here, is that usually a conditional use permit has to start within 12 months and is completed within 24 months. You have concerns with meeting that timeline if I don't know how long you're taking to build this out, but it's something we may want to contemplate as a condition to extend that timeline if it's going to take longer than 24 months
To build out the entire facility or phase one?
to build out the entire facility.
My construction guy could probably answer it better, but I'll give you my best shot at that. I'm pretty sure that the initial phase one will be done in 12 months. It's possible that the entire building would be done in 24 months, but I would think it's more likely to be 36. And again, it's whatever the market, we won't spend the money to turn it to storage if we haven't. We'll probably wait till we get to about 70% on phase one, and then we'll add it so that we never run out. But it doesn't make sense if we're at 40% to build out the rest of it as storage because once we do that, we take out the idea of a warehouse distribution or turning it to office, depending on where in the building we are. I mean, the office retail would be more to the front and the warehouse distribution would be more to the back.
So it would just be something to consider as part of the condition.
So I'm going to clarify our instruction here, because this isn't usually how we do this. Is usually make a motion and then we alderman, and so we're kind of going a little backwards here of how we're doing this. So I think before we honestly ask any more questions, we need to get the process back to normal here.
Okay.
So
Would you like to make a motion?
We have to close the public hearing.
Okay. Any further comments from the public? I will close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay. Okay, motion by Mr. Pinker.
I do have one other question
Okay.
for you. And this might go to Josh too. So if I'm understanding correctly, if the building is fully built out, this is going to need significantly less parking than the Shopko facility required. Am I correct?
Yes.
Is there any plans or has there been any discussions about redeveloping the space on the property and the vacated parking spots into other commercial uses, or we haven't gotten to that point yet? Because I'm just worried about taking that chunk of relatively prime commercial real estate out of a retail, restaurant, office kind of facility. So has there been any discussions about that or anything that's in the works for that?
We certainly would invite it. I don't I haven't anybody contact me directly. I mean, I don't yet own the property, so it would be probably a little premature to expect that somebody would contact me. But surely we're open to redeveloping the parking lot to a productive use. It's what I would call an idle asset at the moment.
Thank you. I know you said you've had the studies and it shows that there's 1,000 units that are, we can support that, but we have multiple storage units around the community that are already, I mean, being used, obviously, but can we see that information that shows us that you actually are gonna be able to fill all these units, 1,018 units, with the additional ones that are around Marshfield? I mean, that's, it seems like an extensive extra units to put in prime time of Marshfield downtown, which is our development area. Is there any way we can see that? Is that something they can share with us to show us that data? Is that possible? Where we can table it and we can take a look and make sure that we are going to be able to use 1,000 units?
Well, I guess my first comment is that the market doesn't demand the 1,000 units, which I believe they will. If the market doesn't demand the 1,000 units, I won't supply the 1,000 units. I'll find an alternative use for the building. So I'm not going to develop 1,000 units if the market only demands 500. And my other comments would be, so my hometown is Baraboo. Baraboo is about half the size of Marshfield. I have a 700 unit facility in Baraboo that is, it's nicer, it's new. It has climate control, but it's metal buildings, not a repurposed building like this. But since I've built my 700 units in Baraboo, and by some people's standards, Marshfield or Baraboo was probably about where Marshfield is supply-wise before we came in. And since I've come in, U-Haul has added over 700 units in a former Kmart, and they're renting at about 50 a month, and I haven't lost occupancy. So I think what people don't understand about this is a large portion of this is another product that you currently don't have. Like, so today, Marshfield is one of the largest towns that I've seen that doesn't have any climate controlled storage, self-storage. It's all what I would call traditional unclimate controlled. So that's one reason that myself and the person that did this study are fairly confident.
Yeah, and I believe there's probably a need for it as well, but I guess my biggest worry about this is the location. I mean, this is gonna be all shopping centers is what we're hoping for, and here we're gonna plug in a storage unit in the middle of it all. We just got a brand new hotel a block away and want to repurpose our mall, and here we are throwing a storage unit right in the middle of our.
Yeah, if I can find 10,000 square feet of retail, I'll surely rent it at that. I make more money renting it as retail at fair market value than I do turning it to storage. But I'm also competing with every empty storefront as I drive through town. So, I mean, in a way, if I turn it to storage, that allows your downtown to fill up. If I make it all retail, then I'm going to compete tooth and nail with all of your downtown. So there's a brutal reality here as to where retail is going in the world and to where office is going in the world. And if you fight to hang on to every square foot for retail and office, while the hard trend is retail is going e-tail and offices are going virtual, you're going to have a lot of empty square foot. So that would be my counter.
Mr. Capillion.
Question, how many projects like this either have you completed or do you have in the works? If you'd be willing to share that. You don't have to tell me locations or anything. We saw the Watertown one. Is that your only one that's done, or?
That's the only one that's done. We are developing a 96,000 square foot Shopko in Watertown directly across the parking lot from that one. So we have quite a bit of confidence if we're basically developing right next to ourselves in a similar sized community as this. So we'll have 1,000 units in Watertown too, between the two facilities. And again, it's the same thing. I can use some of the Shopko in Watertown for retail, office, warehouse distribution.
Have you been successful or had inquiries or tried to find some retail to add in to part of the, maybe you haven't had the opportunity to do it, but in Watertown facilities, any part of that building cordoned off for retail?
So in Watertown, the existing facility, no, because it was only 65,000 square feet. And we took almost 20,000 to dedicate to the drive-through. So we shrunk the building by giving the drive-through. And so at that point, there was no need to give up we did put one retail on the front. And basically I rent to the space to them for nothing. And they are there for my customers. So I basically have an attendant on site 24/7. So there's one retail unit on the front of the building. In the new building in Watertown, we just closed 2 weeks ago. So we haven't contacted anybody yet.
Gotcha.
But it's a similar design to this one where we dedicated some square footage up front, hoping to turn it to retail. With the idea that the hard trend is, while retail still exists, it exists in smaller chunks. Same as office, it still exists, but it exists in smaller chunks. So if somebody's going to utilize a building of this size, they have to be willing to chop it up and probably make it multi-use.
Yeah.
Or they won't be successful.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Connor.
This question more is for staff on this one. If currently the plan would be for development of all of it, so would they have to come back for a new an amended conditional use permit if they were to say go with retail or go with any other options on that? Or is there, if I'm just clarifying?
No, I mean, retail is permitted by right, so they could do retail. If they wanted to go beyond the footprint of what they're showing here, they would have to amend the conditional use. If they don't meet the time frame set by the Plan Commission, they'd have to either come back for the conditional use or ask for an extension. And then again, the motion was made as, I think, as staff recommendation, but that didn't include that additional time frame that I referred.
And then have there been any, more in general, and we don't have to get into specifics of who, but have there been any commercial or retail inquiries in terms of property availability or anything that have come through to the city or to any of the economic development organizations recently that maybe that could maybe possibly involve this building?
You're talking about who's contacted about that specific building, correct?
Or just as anybody that's contacted looking for this type of space in general. I'm not necessarily saying they've contacted about that building, but has there been a show of interest from a retail store or?
So, yeah, as you mentioned, retailers have seemed to go smaller and smaller. They're looking for, a much smaller footprint than the Shopco building. Depending on the retailer, they also might be looking to build brand new. So yeah, you're seeing a trend of either buying much smaller or building to their specific building footprint. So there hasn't really been any inquiries that Emmett or I received since Shopco went vacant in terms of retail or commercial, but there has been several people that have contacted us for storage units, and then also for a light industrial use, which is I believe it's a conditional use in the CMU. But so yeah, we really haven't seen any interest from a retail perspective, and I would imagine that if we did, they wouldn't want the whole building. So.
Any further questions or comments, Mr. Kropilian?
Yeah, so it's kind of amazing to me how much demand there is for storage units, but it's clearly there. I mean, we see it all over the world, and it is a trend to put indoor storage facilities in some of these larger stores. So yeah, I think it's probably the reality, as you mentioned. I don't love the garage door look. I really do prefer the alternate facade that you showed in the rendering there. So I'd like to amend the motion to say we'll require the alternative front facade on the building.
I have a second on.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to amend and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, let's vote on that then, seeing no discussion. So all in favor of amending to require the alternative front facade, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? Okay. Now, is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. O'Connor.
Do we need to extend the timeline, or would that be something that can be done if they come to us, in 24 months, not able to meet it? Would that be the better route to go for a timeline on that? Leave it at the 12 to 24, and then we're not going to meet it. Can we get an extension to 36?
It'd probably require another conditional use, so it would be more beneficial for the applicant now to have it in hand. However, if the plan commission wants to review to see how things are going in 24 months, and if things are not progressing, they could look at it. I don't know what you would do, but as far as getting clarity for the applicant so they can continue on with their project, they would probably prefer the.
I guess I would move to amend to add a recommendation that 50% of minimum 50% of the project must be completed in 24 months, but give them 36 months to complete the entire project.
Or someone to second that?
Second.
By Mr. Cropillion. Got that, Josh? Yep. Okay. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of, read that back to me, Josh.
Hockenegg made a motion, Cropillion seconded, that a minimum of 50% of the project must be completed within 24 months, but the entire project would have to be completed within 30.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? Seeing none, that motion carries unanimously. Any further? Okay, now we're back to the original motion to grant the conditional use permit. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed to that? That motion carries unanimously. Now, okay. Moving on to item number 7, another interesting case. An extraterritorial preliminary plat review request by Jeff Hill to review the map and other materials of the Brickyards for conformity with all ordinances, administrative rules, and regulations. The proposed subdivision is located to the north of Man Street and to the west of Dragonfly Road in the town of McMillan. The property can be legally described as Lot 1 of CSM number 18871 as document number 1829892, located in the west half of the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 29, township 26 north, range 3 east, town of McMillan, Marathon County, Wisconsin, presented by Bryce Hembrook, city planner.
Sorry for making you read all that.
Who's going to explain what all that means?
Right. Thank you, Council President. The applicant is proposing to subdivide 55 acres of land. This land is located to the north of Man Street in the town of McMillan. It is also to the west of Dragonfly, I think it's Lane, and then also to the east of the McMillan Marsh. So this is located in the town of McMillan, so it is outside of the city limits. However, Marshfield has a 3-mile extraterritorial plat jurisdiction, so we get to review and give a recommendation. So the applicant is proposing 24 lots with a minimum lot size of 2 acres in size. The subdivision is not located within our joint plan commission boundary, and so there's no approval needed from the joint plan commission. And it is also highly unlikely that this property would be annexed into the city within the next few decades. So we don't even have a recommendation on our future land use map. So this is not an area that we anticipate to become city property within the city limits anytime soon. Staff does not see any negative impacts, but would like to just inform the applicant that future requests to connect to city water and sewer may be cost prohibitive due to the lot sizes of the development. And so as you see on the screen, there's roughly, I believe there's 24 lots, and there are some wetlands in the northwest portion of the subdivision. But other than that, they're pretty good sized lots. Some of them are a little bit more long and narrow than we would prefer, at least within the city. However, because of the wetlands, they seem to probably be fine. So with that, the recommendation would be to approve the extraterritorial preliminary plat review request by Jeff Hill.
This requires a public hearing, so we'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this matter? Anyone wishing to comment on this matter? And for a third time, anyone wishing to comment? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Johnson, a second.
I think who was second?
Is there any comment on this?
I just have a quick question, and this is very nerdy zoning stuff. With the CSM, is the road name set on that? Because I know Marathon County has insanely strict road naming rules, and I know that was a huge fiasco, and it looks like the road would change name midway. Is that something that has to still be cleared through Marathon County, or?
So I'm not sure if Josh knows, but I am not sure how they design or how they give the road names in Marathon County. So I'm not sure. And I don't know if.
This does go through a review of Marathon County as well, so I'm sure if there's an issue with the road naming system, that would be addressed by them.
Yeah, just one of those things that you know from dealing with that. So, okay, other than that.
Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing no one, that motion carries unanimously. Item number 8, a municipal code amendment request by the city of Marshfield to amend portions of chapter 18, article 9, historic preservation, in order to give the Historic Preservation Committee authority to review and approve certificate of appropriateness requests in order to retain certified local government status. The amendment may also include changing the body's name from Historic Preservation Committee to Historic Preservation Commission, presented by Bryce Hembrook, City Planner.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, so the City of Marshfield is proposing to allow the Historic Preservation Committee, I will refer to them as the HPC, to approve and approve or deny a certificate of appropriateness request. So a COA, or certificate of appropriateness, is required anytime there is a exterior alteration that requires a building permit within a locally designated structure or a locally designated historic district. We do not have a locally designated historic district, so I believe there's about 11 or 12 structures that are actually that would potentially require a COA. So Marshfield is considered to be a certified local government, a CLG, and CLGs are required to designate that the Historic Preservation Committee is to approve or deny a COA. It's one of the requirements in order to retain that CLG status. And I'm sorry, I'm throwing a lot of abbreviations out for you. But there are several benefits for being a certified local government, a CLG. Those are listed in the packet, but the main benefit to being a CLG is that we are eligible for funding through state grants. The HPC, the Historic Preservation Committee, has a very limited budget. We're talking about $3,600. So any funds that we can get for projects is definitely necessary. So we definitely want to try to keep that CLG status. The group is also looking to change their official title to Historic Preservation Commission. Essentially, we're the only HPC within the state that is called a committee. There's really not much of a difference at all. It's just kind of a naming, a different way to name. So it's not like they gain any more power except for being able to approve or deny the COA. So the staff report highlights the current COA review process, but essentially to sum it up, the Historic Preservation Committee serves in advisory manner. So they review the requests and then they recommend to the plan commission whether to approve or deny. Then the plan commission recommends to approve or deny to common council. This change would allow the HPC to have the final say, and then the common council would approve the HPC recommendation in the minutes at their common council meeting. So the proposed changes have been reviewed by the Historic Preservation Committee, and they recommended to approve the request. I also sent the proposed changes to the Certified Local Government Coordinator for the Wisconsin Historical Society in order for him to review. He said that the changes that we are proposing are sufficient to retain the CLG status. He also had some other suggestions that he would make that aren't necessary, I guess, at this meeting, but we will be bringing them forward with our zoning code rewrite. So with that, the recommendation would be to approve the MCA, the Municipal Code Amendment, request by the City of Marshfield, and direct staff to prepare an ordinance for Common Council consideration. Thank you.
This also requires a public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this matter? Any citizens who wish to comment? Third time, any citizens who wish to comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
A motion. Motion to approve.
By Mr. O'Connor, was that? Okay. And there was a second by Mr. Rosendin. Any commentary or questions? Mr. Pinker.
Right, I currently represent the Plan Commission on Historic Preservation. And I've also, as a citizen member, been there for a number of years prior. So during my time on both the Historic Preservation Committee as well as on the Plan Commission, I can recall only 2 instances of items that have to come through both agencies for approval. Some people get worried about the significance of a commission as viewing that as having an extra amount of power, but in reality, that doesn't happen, just the way our historic preservation ordinance is written. And the approval aspect is really rare. I think, I'm trying to think back. The Rodis House was one, and I forget which the other one was. It was
Sears House was another one, I believe.
yeah.
And then we just had that fence on
Just had the
Hardacre.
fence. That would make 3.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries unanimously. Item number 9. Rezoning request by the City of Marshfield to rezone the property parcel 33-05225 located to the south of Green Acres Estates subdivision between Washington and Hume Avenue from SR4 single-family residential and GI general industrial to TR6 two-family residential, presented by Bryce Hembrook, City Planner. Bryce.
Thank you. So the current zoning is, it's a little bit unique. It's a split zone property, which is pretty rare in Marshfield. So in the southwest corner of the property, it is zoned SR4, single family residential, and the rest of the property is zoned GI, general industrial. Now, the majority of the general industrial area is actually wetlands, so it's essentially undevelopable at this point. The proposed zoning, the entire lot would be TR6, but once again, only pretty much the northwest portion of the property would be developable. So as you can see, it is located, I believe it was like 600 feet to the east of Washington, and then on the very right side of the page, you'll see Hume Avenue. So it kind of creates a transition area between residential neighborhoods to the west and then industrial to the east and south. So the city is potentially creating a mixed-use TIF district in order to potentially fund a subdivision opportunity and also to create a TIF district for the other properties in the district. The proposed land uses would likely be single family and potentially two-family residential land uses. It was recommended that the city should rezone this property into one single, they should rezone the property into one single zoning district prior to the TIF district being created. The future land use map identifies this area as being medium density residential. Single family and two family would be an appropriate land use in this district, and the ideal density would be 3 to 10 units per acre. There's no official lot layout currently, so it's hard to really, tell what the density would be, but it's one single lot, so it'd have to be split up, whether that's through a CSM or a plat. I believe it would more than likely have to be reviewed through a preliminary plat. Like I said, the majority of the site consists of wetlands, so that would have to be delineated at a further date. And then a medium density residential neighborhood would be consistent with the land uses to the west and to the north. And this rezoning is supported by the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. So with that, the recommendation would be to approve the rezoning request and direct staff to prepare an ordinance for common council consideration. Thank you.
This requires a public hearing, so we will open a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this matter? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Third time. Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And I will entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. O'Connor, second by Mr. Pinker. Is there any discussion on it? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Moving us to item number 10, an update on the Marshfield Clinic Health System projects relating to the campus master plan, presented by Andrew Lane and Brent Husong from Canon Design and Bill Jackson from Marshfield Clinic Health System. Gentlemen, thank you for waiting. I'll have you step up to the podium, if you will, so we can.
Yeah, and so as they're walking up there, I'll introduce. I'm sorry, I apologize. I thought Brent was going to be in attendance, but we have Andrew Lane from Canon Design, and then also Bill Jackson from Marshfield Clinic Health System. This will basically be an update on the short-term projects for the Marshfield Clinic Health System. A couple months back, the Plan Commission was curious as to how their campus master plan was progressing. They will have some longer-term projects that they'll be presenting to you guys in the future, but for right now, we figured it would be good just to kind of discuss some of the, short-term, next couple months worth of projects. So with that, Andrew, if you'd like to take over.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay? We had few slides here just to talk about what's been going on at the campus. And as previously stated, Canon Design is currently in the process of looking long-term at some of the strategic master plan, new projects we might have. We don't have any definitive actions on that yet, but what we can share with you today is some things that are definitely happening, or at least we hope they're happening, and we fully intend to do. Two things are one thing are some demolition of some existing buildings on the campus, and on the south end of the campus, along, St. Joseph Avenue there. It's an existing south building that connects to the west tower, and there's an existing freestanding wellness building. Both of those buildings are planned to be torn down. They're past their useful life, and they're sort of in the way of future planning efforts. So the best thing to do at this point, we figured, is to clear that space for future growth. Then, next slide. We also, to help improve patient flow within the campus and to connect, they have sort of Oak Avenue sort of splits their campus in two, east side and west side. We're providing a bridge that will allow patient travel back and forth from care areas on the east tower into the west tower for surgical services and those kinds of things those patients need. And right now they have to go through a public corridor, which is not the best experience if you're a cancer patient and you have to go through public areas to get to your radiation oncology, et cetera. So they're doing that to help separate that flow of patients for better privacy and satisfaction, both for caregivers and the patients particularly. So that's a pretty strategic initiative to help tie the campus together and create a front of house and back of house circulation path. And some other projects that are active is we're also working on designing a new ED and urgent care combined. Right now, they have a separate urgent care and an emergency department on the campus. We're consolidating that into one location. We're going to move that to the floor down from where it is today, and there'll be some slight reskinning, some new improved architecture to kind of identify that entry for wayfinding. But most of that work is interior renovation only. And that's on the, if you're familiar with the campus today, you know the parking deck there when you enter the ED. That's just going, so the new entry will be below that. So you'll tuck underneath the parking deck as a covered sort of entry now into that ED. And so moving all that down so to clear some space for potential growth for some of the, what we think, we don't know, is potentially for some expansion of some services in the hospital there on the upper floor. Looking as well into, what do we do with potentially inpatient beds in the future? And how do we think about what goes on with, we're taking some existing space in the East Tower that was planned for, or that was currently being used for some outpatient clinics, and they were sort of always intended for beds, but now we're converting them back to beds to help while we started thinking about renovating some other space that gives us places to kind of empty chairs to move things around a little bit. And we're also going to put ICU beds. If you can see sort of the central rectangle there, we're converting some existing space to a new intensive care unit for the critical care patients that are needed. And then we're also going to convert into some, it's a 26-bed unit that has some isolation rooms, et cetera, for those patients. That's those projects. So that's kind of the stuff we know that are happening. They're underway. Some of those projects maybe haven't come through permitting yet. Some have, but you will be seeing those either through permitting requests, et cetera, as we get moving on those. And then, as we said, as we're doing those projects, we're also looking into the future projects, and we don't have any definitive answers, but the last few days we've been meeting with a lot of the different departments to figure out what the 10-year growth might need to be, or how we might reposition some things. And so we'll eventually come down and look at, we're going to have some plans that'll talk about how we're going to beautify the campus, how we're going to grow or contract the campus additionally to help streamline services to make it more competitive in the marketplace. And then we'll just, but that's all going to be going on over the next few months, and we'll hope to have that plan completed by the end of this year. So any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions if we can.
Any questions? Mr. Pinker?
Yes.
This is just relative to the South Building. I'm also on the Fire and Police Commission, and thank you for letting the fire department get in there for doing the training routines. It's greatly appreciated.
I didn't know about that, but you're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? You say short term. What's short term? For instance, tearing down the building.
Yeah, you mean like what's the time frame for the?
Yeah.
Well, for instance, I think right now the South Building is still being used as a COVID testing site too, so they want to make sure that's going to stay in place until it's no longer needed. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's a definitive date, but I think all these projects you'll be seeing the permitting applications for the different projects will need permits by the next few months if you haven't seen them already. The demolition, I think we're thinking it's going to be happening September-ish, but again, if COVID testing still needs to occur and there might be some other things that come up, there's not a critical path to that, but the intent is to get those down sooner than later because it's just something that needs to happen to kind of show progress and make kind of show the campus there's a serious intent to some of these things. So they haven't committed to a contract yet, but certainly it's something they want to do by the end of the year.
Okay, I was just looking for an idea of what short term is.
Yep. Does that seem to sound short term?
Yes. Mr. Rosen.
I can't remember the name of the building, but I know it, the business went out of it. Is that part of the campus? It's on the curve there of Oak, and it was Hope Lodge. Is that part of the campus, or is that something completely different? Is that part of the medical centers?
We have to look at the map. I don't recall. It hasn't really been discussed as part of it because the clinic doesn't own it and operate it. But I think it could be zoned campus district. We'd have to check.
Because it's a shame to see a building like that just sitting there, and it's right off a campus to utilize that as part of the medical center. It just seems logical, but.
Yeah, I can't recall if that particular lot is owned by the campus. I'm sorry, I just don't recall to answer that definitively, but.
I don't think it is. It's just it kind of fits into the model of what you guys are doing. So it just seems to be able to repurpose it, since we talk about that all the time anyway. So.
Yeah, if there's something within our planning that piece of property becomes targeted, we'll certainly bring that up to see if it's got any kind of traction. Whatever it is, right now, we haven't had any discussions about that building, but if something comes up, we think that's a particularly plot of land that's of interest, we'll certainly bring it up for discussion.
And when you say ED, you mean emergency department?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, I'm sorry. There's all kinds of acronyms with healthcare, it's like you have to speak a whole different language.
Josh, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and I want to thank you guys for coming and giving us an update. Just a couple of things. There's a couple of remnant properties throughout that are, miszoned possibly, so we're going to try to clean up some of that, I think, through this process with the campus master plan. One of the reasons we wanted to bring this forward is the original plan for the south building was, I think, for administrative building and so administrative purposes, and that's just not going to fit with what their future campus is. The reason they don't have to amend the campus plan for the demo is because demo is permitted by right use and they're not developing that building. So just to kind of clarify that it's not in line with what their current campus plan says. That's why we're doing the short-term update, and then we'll be doing the long-term plan update in the future. So their campus plan, I think, is only 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken, and it was planned for a 10-year period, but things have changed a lot. So we really appreciate the working relationship with them and their continued effort to try to get information to us so that we can plan as a community for infrastructure and the necessary needs for the campus.
Excellent.
One more question.
Sure.
Mr. Rosen.
Thank you. Is there a plan, and maybe this isn't a longer term plan, but with the parking lot off of McMillan, that is just the parking lot of nowhere? What is the plan for that?
We have not spoken about that specifically, so I can't.
Is there a reason?
I will say that we're looking at lots of different places for potential growth areas, and we're still gathering a lot of data right now just on what we think projected growth department needs will be, and also kind of evaluating the age of facilities and if they're out of date, past their useful life. And as we see the strategic need for different facilities, we're going to start looking at where those departments or buildings might need to land. So we're not there yet. I can't answer that, but certainly any place there's a big giant parking lot is an opportunity for growth of some sort.
What was the original plan for that? Any idea?
I don't know. I was here for it. Originally, when the hospital was going to be built next to the east wing, they needed additional parking to accommodate for that facility. So at one point, there was a 7-story hospital plan for next to the east wing before they acquired St. Joseph. Part of that process was to build this off-site parking to accommodate for staging, plus also shuttling of workers and stuff.
It's at least a nice looking park.
Great.
Any further comments or questions for these gentlemen? Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thanks,
and
everybody.
sharing your
Appreciate it.
plans.
Thank you for your time.
Item number 11 is items for future agendas. Do we have any? Seeing none. Any staff updates?
Yeah, I just wanted to announce this is probably Steve's last Plan Commission meeting as a Plan Commission member, so I want to thank him for his service. He is asked to be relieved of duties because of his schedule and stuff like that. So we have found a replacement, hopefully. We're asking for the second reading will take place at the next council meeting for his replacement. So I want to wish Steve well and appreciate his time serving on the Plan Commission.
It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. Just doesn't quite work with the work schedule anymore. So maybe down the road, we'll see me back again at some point, but.
Steve's a very, very familiar face around here for many years already, and thank you for your service, and we'll find another spot. Any further staff updates? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn with making sure to say Bucks and 6.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn and a second by Mr. Rosendich. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're adjourned.